Welcome and a good morning to all of you in the United States and a good evening to those of you in Thailand for the launch of the Thailand Focus webinar series. Since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic earlier this year, how we interact with one another has changed drastically, hampered by social distancing and other lockdown restrictions. Be that as it may, all of us engaged in promoting Thai-US ties have continued to do our best to move our relationship forward. For this reason, the Royal Thai Embassy, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, has launched this Thailand Focus webinar series to overcome the limitation of in-person interaction and difficulty of organizing exchanges of visits during this challenging time. We hope that this webinar series will become a new platform for virtual exchanges between Thailand and the United States, engaging high-level policymakers, executives, and experts in Thailand and in the US, acting as a bridge to better understanding between stakeholders in both countries. The first discussion in this series will provide an update on how Thailand has tackled the COVID-19 pandemic while addressing the economic challenges that have emerged. We will be hearing from senior officials from the Ministry of Public Health directly involved in the country's work in containing the pandemic, and from the Ministry of Finance on how measures have been put in place to mitigate the economic impacts of the crisis and the outlook ahead. Before we hear from them, though, as today is the official launch of the webinar series, I am honored that Thai Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Wichawat Isarapakdi, and the U.S. Ambassador to Thailand, His Excellency Michael Sombre, have agreed to deliver some inaugural remarks. A few housekeeping issues before we start. This event will be recorded and will be made available later through various channels, including the embassy's website and YouTube channels. Please make use of the chat function anytime by sending your questions to the host for the Q&A session. Given the time constraint space, let us jump right into the proceedings by first inviting Vice Minister Wichawat Isarapakdi to deliver his remarks. His Excellency really requires little introduction, having been posted in Washington as Thai Ambassador here from 2013 to 2015. His last ambassadorial posting was in Canada from 2015 to 17, after which he went back to Thailand to become an advisor to the Foreign Ministry and in August of last year as Vice Minister. A Fulbright scholar, he earned his Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy as well as PhD in International Relations from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy before joining the Thai Foreign Service, where he served with distinction for 27 years. Vice Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tani. It's always great to see you again. I still miss sitting in the chair that you're occupying right now, but glad to see you doing such a great job. Anyway, good evening from Bangkok and a very good morning to all our friends in the United States. It is my great pleasure to deliver the opening remarks at this inaugural session of the Thailand Focus webinar series. Let me begin by thanking all the representatives from government agencies, the private sector, think tanks, and academic institutions for joining us from near and far. I would also like to express my appreciation to Ambassador Tani and his dedicated team at the Royal Thai Embassy in Washington for initiating and hosting this virtual webinar, which is certainly timely as all of us continue to adapt to the new normal. We are honored to be joined today by a very special guest speaker, Ambassador Michael Sombre, who has been playing a very active role in promoting Thai-US cooperation, including potential collaboration with the US private sector to support Thailand's post-pandemic economic recovery. My sincere appreciation also goes to our esteemed panelists, Dr. Thanarak Palipat from the Ministry of Public Health, and Dr. Pisit Puapan from the Ministry of Finance, who have both been directly involved in Thailand's response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the public health and economic aspects. Given the impressive lineup of speakers, I'm certain that this inaugural webinar will be a productive one and will offer many useful insights and ideas for all participants. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as a former Thai ambassador to Washington, I am pleased that Thailand and the United States continue to enjoy very special ties. Ours is not only a close, dynamic, and mutually beneficial relationship, but also one that is resilient and always rises to the new challenges. The COVID-19 situation is certainly a case in point. While the pandemic may have created difficulties for our regular exchange of visits and meetings, we were still able to facilitate the significant visit of General James McConville, Chief of Staff of the US Army, in July this year, as well as the arrival of more than 300 US diplomats and their family members since March. Furthermore, our dialogue still continues unimpeded. Early this morning, or late last night in Washington, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Don Paramatvinai joined his ASEAN counterparts in a productive meeting with Secretary Pompeo at the ASEAN-US Ministerial Meeting, which, in adapting to the new normal, was held completely online for the first time. Like other countries, the Thai and US economies have been facing multiple challenges from COVID-19. In Thailand's case, the travel restrictions have taken a toll on our tourism industry, which accounts for over 20% of our GDP and employs around 12% of the total workforce. Thailand's GDP contracted from 1.8% in the first quarter of this year to minus 12.2% in the second quarter. Nevertheless, every cloud has a silver lining. And in this case, we find that trade between Thailand and the United States has been minimally affected. During the first 7 months of this year, our total trade value decreased by a mere 1.04% compared to last year. And it has in fact been on a gradual rebound, increasing by 14.6% in June and 17.47% in July. Such is the strength of our economic ties. Much has been written about Thailand's effective handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as our economic resilience. I believe this can be attributed to a number of factors. To start off, our country has been successful in developing a strong healthcare system and in striking a delicate balance between disease control and economic recovery. The Johns Hopkins University's 2019 Global Health Security Index ranked Thailand as the world's 6th best prepared country and the best in Asia for confronting the pandemic, while the Global COVID-19 Index ranks Thailand first among those with the highest COVID-19 recovery. As a result, foreign companies in Thailand were able to continue their businesses, facilitated by an uninterrupted supply chain, even at the height of the pandemic. As an important part of global and regional supply chains, Thailand enjoys economic fundamentals that remain strong and competitive. This includes our strategic location in ASEAN and the Mekong sub-region, as well as our well-connected road, air, and sea infrastructure. We are proud to be hosting at present over 700 American companies, and we continue to appreciate the US private sector's valuable contribution to our economic development. Our success thus far in handling the COVID-19 pandemic and the encouraging signs of recovery notwithstanding, Thailand is aware that the path ahead will be long and uncertain. Many countries still grapple with the COVID-19 situation, and many of those that have successfully addressed the pandemic are now seeing its recurrence. While we remain hopeful that a cure for this disease is forthcoming, it is likely to take some time for prospective vaccines to be fully tested and ready for distribution. Like the old saying that a friend in need is a friend indeed, the ongoing global pandemic is a time when friendships are most valuable. The pandemic poses a common challenge that no country can overcome alone. It also highlights the importance of a strong partnership between Thailand and the United States as we work closely together to mitigate the social economic impact caused by COVID-19. And I am certain that we are well placed to face up to any challenges that lie ahead of us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, please allow me to offer some final thoughts on how Thailand and the United States can work together in moving forward our cooperation amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. First, we should explore ways to draw on each other's strengths and our well-established cooperation in public health. In particular, this year marks the 40th anniversary of the fruitful cooperation between the Thai Ministry of Public Health and the US Centers for Disease Control that has greatly benefited our peoples and others in the region. The question we must now ask ourselves is, how do we build on this success to address the COVID-19 pandemic and other communicable diseases in the future? And how can the Thai and US private sectors play a greater role in this endeavor, such as through vaccine development and other recovery treatments, as well as by grooming new generations of medical professionals and researchers? Second, as we work closely together to revive our economies, there are various existing ideas and initiatives that we can further explore. This includes, for example, identifying so-called winner industries that emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, in parallel with supporting other sectors of the economies to attain full and fast economic recovery for both our countries. In this connection, the second Indo-Pacific Business Forum in Bangkok last year was a good example of how the governments and private sectors of both Thailand and the United States have worked together to promote future economic cooperation. The meeting has pointed out ample business opportunities in the region that would answer to the needs on the ground and are in line with our government policies and priorities, including initiatives under the US Free and Open Indo-Pacific Strategy. We should therefore ponder on how to further translate those ideas and inputs into concrete outcomes that are beneficial for both sides, especially in these challenging times. I believe that with their vast knowledge and expertise, Dr. Thanarak Plipat and Dr. Pisit Puapan would be able to help shed some light on these questions. At the same time, we certainly welcome inputs from all our participants that would add depth and dimension to our discussions as we continue our exchanges on these timely issues. So once again, Ambassador Thani, I wish this event every success, and I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister, for your remarks, particularly your final thoughts on how to move forward our cooperation. Our next speaker is actually my opposite number, U.S. Ambassador to Thailand, Michael George Dusombri. He arrived in Thailand in January and has been extremely active since in promoting, among other things, our economic and commercial ties. This, in fact, should come as no surprise, as prior to his posting, Ambassador Dusombri was a partner in the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell, where he led their M&A practice in Asia, representing and negotiating on behalf of American and international clients in large-scale investments and economic development projects in Asia. Ambassador Dusombri graduated from Stanford University with a BA in Quantitative Economics and an MA in East Asian Studies, and received his JD from Harvard Law School. Ambassador Dusombri, the floor is yours.
So, Vice Minister, Ambassador Thani, it's an honor for me to participate in this first Thailand Focus event with you today. A good part of our work here in Bangkok has been to expand knowledge among Thai citizens of the strength and depth of our multifaceted alliance. We work hard to tell the story of the mutually beneficial friendship between our two nations, now stretching into its third century. So I certainly appreciate the efforts of the Thai Embassy in Washington, D.C. to build knowledge in the United States of this alliance and the benefits it brings to both our nations. I'm honored to have been appointed to be President Trump's personal representative to the Kingdom of Thailand, a mission of critical importance for the American people and to the Indo-Pacific region. Thailand is a key partner and our most enduring ally in Asia. We have enjoyed more than 2 centuries of friendly relations, have been diplomatic treaty partners for over 185 years, and security treaty allies for 65 years. Our broad cooperation benefits both our countries, the region, and the world beyond. the US-Thai relationship covers a full range of political, security, health, and economic cooperation. Over the past 6 months, the world has faced an unprecedented global health challenge that has fundamentally changed our workspaces, the way we interact with others, how we do business, and what our travel and social lives look like. It is a global challenge that will continue to have an impact on us for months to come. But we are exceedingly fortunate here in Thailand to have some of the best healthcare resources in the world, with excellent hospitals and doctors and nurses with world-class training. And the United States is proud to contribute to that success in the field of healthcare. Over the past 20 years, the US government has invested more than $1 billion in assistance to Thailand, including nearly $214 million in health assistance. To date, the US has provided over $16 million to Thailand to support Thailand's fight against COVID-19. As the Vice Minister indicated, this year we are also celebrating the 40th anniversary of the partnership between the Royal Thai government and the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which actually has its largest office outside of the United States right here in Bangkok. The US CDC, co-located on the campus of the Ministry of Public Health, continues to work hand in glove with the Thai authorities to tackle this pandemic. Our partnership in healthcare extends beyond the CDC, however. The Armed Forces Research Institute of Medical Sciences, or AFRIMS, has been cooperating with Thai scientists for over 60 years, working on cutting-edge vaccines that save countless of millions of lives. Actually, almost 20% of my embassy here in Thailand focuses on healthcare. The CDC and AFRIMS, working in partnership with the Thai government, continue to work on groundbreaking research to advance human health, including combating HIV/AIDS, malaria, dengue, Zika, and other infectious diseases. Together, we continue to work with Thai authorities to repel COVID-19, as well as other diseases, and protect ourselves and our loved ones. This health cooperation is emblematic of the extremely deep relationship that exists between the United States and Thailand. Our economic cooperation is similarly storied. Indeed, commercial opportunities helped to first drive us together as we signed the Treaty of Amity and Commerce in 1833. American companies have long found opportunity in Thailand, and both of our nations have grown richer as we have done business together over the centuries. American companies have invested tens of billions of dollars in Thailand, and the United States remains Thailand's top export market. US companies have found a home, and profitably, in Thailand, in some cases for generations. Here they have found the stability and sound economic management that has enabled them to operate profitably, not just in Thailand, but from Thailand throughout the region. My goal now is to create even more business opportunities for US companies in Thailand and further expand the two-way trade and investment between our countries. Similarly, one of my priorities is to work with the Royal Thai government to create the necessary conditions to bring even more US companies' supply chain operations and US investment to Thailand. And this supply chain effort fits neatly with the very themes that intersect in this first Thailand Focus event, the intersection of health and the next phase of Thailand's economy. It does so in two ways. First, Thailand's performance in managing its economy during the pandemic is solid evidence of the kingdom's commitment to business. As you will hear in detail, I'm sure, from the Ministry of Health later in this event, Thailand has been quite successful in controlling the spread of the coronavirus. And at the same time, it has done a remarkable job keeping industry running and productive throughout the crisis. Coronavirus-induced lockdowns have forced many global companies to reduce their operations or even fully shut down for a period of time in many countries. Yet American companies here in Thailand have been uniform in their praise for the Thai government, as they have contrasted the Royal Thai government's consultative, reasoned management of business during the pandemic with sometimes harsh or rash responses elsewhere in the region and around the world. The Thai government and the Thai Chamber of Commerce work closely with me, my team, and US businesses in a consultative manner throughout the crisis. It was a welcome demonstration of why we have grown to be such close partners in business over the last 200 years. But second, let me note how Thailand is using this health crisis to promote positive change in the economy. This crisis has revealed vulnerabilities in the supply chains of many global companies. Crises, however, can spur positive change. Companies are re-examining their global business operations, investments, and supply chains to ensure they are safe, reliable, and secure. And because of this, they are looking to Thailand. Safe supply chains run through countries that are friends and allies and who share a commitment to transparency, individual opportunity, and markets free from domination by the state. Reliable supply chains run through countries with a free and robust media and an independent judiciary who share a commitment to the rule of law and sanctity of contracts. And secure supply chains exist in countries where companies are protected from cyber theft or the theft of intellectual property. Thailand sees the opportunity inherent in this moment, and the country is moving to embrace it. I've engaged with many members of the Thai cabinet who are seeking to implement real change here. They see the value in ensuring safe, secure, and reliable supply chains. Thailand is actively pursuing regulatory changes and incentives that should further attract world-class firms and spur cutting-edge innovations. Changes that will help foster startups and attract more financial services. Changes that will allow Thailand to emerge from this global health crisis stronger still and with an even more vibrant economy. And the United States has been a partner to Thailand in this endeavor. We have consulted with US businesses, including some of you with us at this event today, to understand obstacles or roadblocks to your trade, your investment, or expansion of your Thai operations. And we are working with the government of Thailand to address those constraints. Similarly, we work with entrepreneurs, financiers, and the Royal Thai government itself to help pinpoint and eliminate constraints on startup growth and help spur local innovation. A few final thoughts with the last of my allotted time. For my audience in the United States today, I assume you've been drawn to this event because you work with or are considering working with Thailand, be you government or private sector. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me and my team at the embassy. We're eager to help you explore and learn more about the opportunities here and for you to become part or a bigger part of this relationship that has brought so much to both our nations. And for my friends in the Thai government and here in Thailand, know that we are your steadfast partner. We are similarly eager to hear from you about how we can creatively work together. As we move forward, our eyes are firmly set on a long-term mutually beneficial relationship. When we work together, the possibilities are endless. So thank you for your time today. And again, I will look forward to the next Thailand Focus event. Thank you very much, Ambassador Thani and Vice Minister.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your remarks, highlighting so many aspects of our multifaceted relationship and the opportunities ahead. At this juncture, let me once again thank Vice Minister Wichawat and Ambassador Disonbri for delivering special remarks at today's inaugural event. Let me now turn to today's agenda, which is COVID-19, Thailand's response and economic outlook. To update you on the public health response, we are honored to have with us Dr. Thanarak Tripat, Deputy Director General of the Department of Disease Control, Ministry of Public Health. Dr. Thanarak started his medical career at the Krabi Provincial Health Office in 1991. He served as a medical epidemiologist for the HIV/AIDS surveillance section and as a Thai co-director of the Ministry of Public Health of Thailand's US CDC collaboration from 2010 to 2013. He has served on many national committees on public health, including on the Committee for Clinical Study of Pandemic Influenza Cases and Deaths and the National Strategic Advisory Committee of Experts on Pandemic Influenza. He was appointed chair of a committee to draft a Department of Disease Control Research Strategic Plan in 2003, 2007, and again in 2017. He studied medicine at the Prince Songkla University in Thailand and received a master's in public health from Mahidol University and a PhD in epidemiology from the School of Public Health, University of California, Los Angeles. Doctor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me start by telling you the story of global pandemics of COVID-19 in Thailand. Following the news of the outbreak of pneumonia from Wuhan and the information about the numbers of travelers from Wuhan to Thailand, Thailand's Department of Disease Control activated its emergency operation centers and started its surveillance system for the travelers on January 3rd, 2020. The first known case of COVID-19 arrived in the country on January 8th and was detected at the airport. The patient was admitted to Bamrat Naradun Institute of Infectious Disease and was later confirmed to be positive for COVID-19 on 13 January 2020. I would like to mention here is that by that time, we don't have exact testing scheme for the COVID-19 yet. It was the Thai laboratories that was able to diagnose these patients by using its methods of doing the testing. The patient was the first confirmed case of COVID-19 outside China. Thailand's strong surveillance system for incoming travelers was able to detect number of cases throughout January and February. After the Chinese authorities reported that the disease could transmit from human to human, Thailand started surveillance among Thai population who has close contact with Chinese travelers, which enabled Thailand to detect the first locally transmitted case on 31st of January. In February, while the number of cases remained low, the Department of Disease Control started prepare for the outbreak. The department held two important training sessions, one for the Communicable Disease Control Unit and the Rapid Response Team, and the other for the hospital staff. The department also started to stockpile essential equipment and medicines. We start to import the antivirals, Avigans, in early February. The number of cases increased in March as a result of several case clustering events in several nightclubs, Thai boxing matches in Bangkok, and the return of Muslim pilgrims from Malaysia. In response, the Prime Minister established the Centers for COVID-19 Situation Administration, CCSA, on March 12th, and on March 17th, the government closed venues where many people congregate, such as a sporting event, entertainment place, school, and arts offices to consider allowing their staff to work from home. On March 24th, Thailand declares the state of emergencies, and on April 3rd, start to have issue the curfew, and ban all commercial flights into the countries on April 4th. The number of new confirmed cases gradually dropped throughout April and May. The number of new infections returned to single digit on April 27th. The government started to reopen businesses gradually on May 3rd. The last confirmed locally transmission was reported on May 25th. And recently, we just have one cases that I will mention to you a little bit later. Our public health system was established long ago, but for the health security system that enabled us to tackle this COVID-19 outbreak was really started back in 1977 when the country established primary healthcare programs, which give birth to a village health volunteers, and also field epidemiology training program back in 1980s. To date, Thailand has more than 1 million village health volunteers and more than 200 real-time field epidemiologists and more than 1,000 communicable disease control units that can investigate outbreaks and perform contact tracing. Thailand started implemented health security programs and public health emergency management in 2007 and re-engineered the programs in 2015. Thailand has actively strengthened countries' international health regulation capacities and joined global health security agenda in 2014. It is currently one of the steering member countries, and next year we are going to be the chair of global health security agenda. The experience in dealing with epidemics and pandemic ranging from SARS, avian influenza, H5N1 pandemic influenza, H1N1 in 2009, MERS and Zika virus disease has helped the country public health system to better prepare for the new threat. The preparation for Ebola virus disease and avian influenza H7N9 also helped to strengthen and revise the country preparation strategies in 2017. Thailand health security system may not counted as one of the best, but the system has deep level of capacity to deal with epidemics and pandemic. That's really helped us in this outbreak or this pandemic. Our 7 success factors, I already mentioned the strong health security system. The other is timeliness. Thailand did the right thing quickly. Thailand Department of Disease Control and the government start to plan, prepare, and implement in prevention control measures early and stays at least one step ahead of the outbreak. The activity range from activation of our emergency operation centers, doing surveillance on travelers, person who has close contact with travelers, and other things. That slowed down the epidemics in our population. The third success factor was the empowerment of public health experts. Health experts were empowered by the public health minister and also the prime minister to lead the response. The strategic group of experts was set up on February 5th to give the in-depth analysis of the situation and strategic advice to the Ministry of Public Health and to the Prime Minister. So far, the strategic group of experts has provided strategic direction, strategic framework for prevention and control of the situation, as well as several practical recommendations to the Ministry of Public Health and also to the CCSA. We have a collective leadership and decisive leadership led by the Prime Minister and also the Minister of Public Health. We have comprehensive multi-sectoral response. The government enrolls multi-sectors in the fight, including the private sector and civil society. Their ideas were heard and shared. Both the private sectors and the civil societies were instrumental in implementing the soft lockdown, the prevention measures during the soft lockdown, and design the recommendation for the reopen of the business in May. And of course, we have a very strong communication that led by the Office of the Prime Minister. And my last factor here was that I call it myself Bangrajan spirit. Every time the Thai people has a crisis, the Thai people will unite. Some may call it Bangrajan spirit, the culture of high willingness to help others, and the culture of willingness to change habits to suit new situation is an integral part of Thai cultures. These qualities have led to high compliance with safety guidance, universal wearing of masks, universal availability, and use of hand hygiene. The rate of wearing masks increased to nearly 100%. The strong willingness to help in times of crisis help us win the first battles against COVID-19. Our current issue that we now currently facing is the situation in Myanmar, especially the illegal migrant workers coming from Myanmar. We start to have sporadic cases that was detected by our surveillance system. And following the detection of cases, we immediately investigate and control whatever happened. And currently, there was no secondary cases detected. And our next plan was to open up for short and long-term travelers who interested to come into countries for business and also for the tourist purpose. That will be all for us, for me, for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, and through you to all the health and essential workers back home in helping to keep Thailand safe. Our next speaker is Dr. Pisit Puapan, Executive Director of Macroeconomic Policy from the Fiscal Policy Office under the Ministry of Finance of Thailand. As such, he is responsible for supervising the economic monitoring and assessment for Thailand and policy formulation under the Finance Ministry, as well as performing economic and fiscal assessments with the IMF and credit rating agencies. Dr. Puapan received his undergraduate degree in economics from Boston College, a master's degree in international economics and finance from Brandeis University, and a PhD in economics from the National Institute of Development Administration in Thailand. Dr. Pisit, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I think in terms of the economic situation for Thailand, given the COVID-19, I think as highlighted by the Ambassador and the Vice Minister, Thailand, like many other countries, has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we can see that in terms of the economic performance in the first half of the year, we can see that Thai economy contracted, particularly in the second quarter of the year, as highlighted that Thai economy contracted by 12.2%. But we believe that this is the bottom of the Thai economy because we can see that the latest economic number that the gradual recovery of the Thai economy. So the Ministry of Finance, we closely monitor the economy when we see that when we look at the latest economic indicator, whether it be domestic spending in terms of the transportation, in terms of the oil consumption, we can see the recovery in the month of July and August. So I think we can start to see the recovery. And I think given the, as highlighted by Dr. Thanarak, that Thailand has been quite successful at containing the spread of the virus. So since June, the government has been able to reopen the economic activity. So we can see that the economic activity return to a better situation compared to the month of April and May. So the Ministry of Finance, we believe that the bottom of the Thai economy has already been passed in the month of April and May. And gradually, we expect the second half of 2020 to be improving trend. And next year, so basically for this year, we expect the economy to contract by NASDB expect contraction by about 7.5%. The Ministry of Finance, we expect the economic contraction to be about 8%. But I think the important thing is if we look forward to next year, we expect the Thai economy to rebound. So to show the positive growth at about 4.5%. So we can expect that next year, the Thai economy will improve for the year 2021. But I think the important thing that I would like to highlight is in terms of the economic fundamental of Thailand. I think when a lot of people compare Thailand at this time in terms of the COVID crisis back to the previous economic crisis, whether it be 1997. But I think investors should note that the economic picture is totally different from Thailand at the current time, 2020, and compared to 1997, or even compared to 2008 global economic crisis. Because as highlighted in the number is that economic fundamental of Thailand is very strong. When we look at all the number, low inflation, low unemployment, even if during the worst of the crisis in the second quarter, unemployment rate picked up from 1% to 2%. But I think the key point is that the unemployment rate in Thailand remain low and not up to what many people expected to be massive unemployment. So far, the unemployment rate in Thailand is about 2%. And given that we expect the improvement in the second half of the year, I think the government should be able to contain the situation. International reserve at high level. I think the important thing is also to look at the public debt to GDP in Thailand at about right now it's about 45% of GDP. So I think the important thing is that Thailand has a lot of fiscal ability, fiscal capacity for further spending to stimulate the economy in the future. In terms of the financial sector, we also strong, low NPL level, and Thai banks are well capitalized. In terms of the competitiveness ranking, looking ahead, I think after in the post-COVID, Thailand should be able to continue to regrow our economy. In terms of the competitiveness ranking in the ASEAN, Thailand consistently ranked at high level. When we whether we look at the IMD or WEF or the World Bank doing business index, Thailand is quite well. Now I'll come to the last part of my presentation on the economic policy for the COVID-19. I think Thai government is quite keen to handle the COVID-19 situation. In terms of the economic policy coming from the Ministry of Finance, we have a lot of fiscal capacity. So the government has been able to support the domestic economy. I think we divided into target group. We support the affected group. For example, we have the cash hand out 5,000 baht for 3 months period. I think the cash hand out was quite timely. It affect the help the affected group at the top of the economic bottom in the month of April, May, and June. Also, we also support the business sector. I think on the presentation here, you will see that we have the tax incentive to the hotel operator at the time of the low tourism for them to implement hotel renovation. We also encourage the organization of the seminar across the country. So any activity for this year, there's a tax incentive for the tourism operator, and also for the to boost the domestic tourism. In terms of the policy, so we can see that as I mentioned, we have the policy to support the people. We have the policy to support the SME, the entrepreneur, the small businesses, so through the soft loan program that can support the SME sector, and also the tax payment delay. This will help the liquidity of the business that affected by the COVID-19. I think looking ahead, we also come up with the major economic policy in the with the sizable spending in terms of the 1 trillion baht special borrowing program to support the COVID-19 alleviation. So we have the 1 trillion baht that will have the local investment component. We also have the people support component. So the 1 trillion baht program will be used for this year and continue to next year, the year 2021. So you can see that the government have enough fiscal resource to deal with the COVID-19 from this year and next year. And also the financial policy, the Bank of Thailand have the soft loan program to the SME worth of 500 billion baht. So you can see that the soft loan program, 2% interest rate for the SME sector, this program can support the SME. And so far, over 100 billion baht has already been disbursed to support the SME. We also, the Bank of Thailand also set up the liquidity fund for the domestic bond market for the corporate sector that to continue raising fund in the domestic bond market. In term, on the next slide, we can see that in terms of the fiscal policy that I mentioned, this year we are in fiscal year 2020. Next year we are in the year fiscal 2021. I think fiscal year 2021 will start soon in October 1st, but we can see that the government will continue to run fiscal expansion. So we can see that the fiscal stimulus will be worth additional 623 billion baht in the fiscal year 2021. That is about 3.5% of GDP. And also on top, we have also the 1 trillion baht program that I mentioned earlier that will be conducted in the year 2020 and the year 2021. This will ensure we have enough fiscal resources to support the economy. I think in terms of the outlook, on the next slide, we can expect many industry in Thailand to recover in the post-COVID-19. We expect the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Industry, we monitor the situation. We expect many industry to have the V-shape and the U-shape recovery, whether it be consumer goods, animal feed industry, the food and beverage industry, the electrical appliance industry, the chemical industry. So these are the major industry that we expect to recover, given the second half of the economy will be better than the first half and continue on going into the year 2021, that we expect the economy to be show positive growth in about 4 to 5% growth for the year 2021. On the next slide, I think on the longer term policy, I think the government now also focus on the after COVID. The policy that we are focused on will try to aim to build the competitiveness of Thailand, whether on the next slide, whether it be financial technology. So we are promoting the financial technology and the cashless society. So we are promoting the financial technology and digital economy. On the next slide, the tax incentive to support the domestic investment, and also the soft loan measure to support the SME investment. On the next slide, we can see the EEC, the transformation of the Thai industry in the eastern part, the Eastern Economic Corridor of Thailand, with the 12 target industry that will be the key to revitalize the industrial growth in Thailand. On the next slide, BOI also in the first half of the year approved over 213 billion baht of the project. And you can see that the example of the approved project are the future industry of Thailand, whether it be smart agriculture, aircraft, manufacturing, design, automation, and space industry. So these are the things that the government are aiming to promote the new industry in Thailand that will generate a future job for the country. Lastly, I think as the ambassador mentioned that the Thailand and US trade relation, the US is our number one trading partner. So I think we can see that Thailand and US have a very strong trading relationship. So I think there are many opportunities. I think on the last point that I would like to highlight is that there are many investment opportunity in Thailand. So you can see that the FDI investment in Thailand at the moment focus on the manufacturing sector, financial sector, real estate sector, hotel resale, the new technology, the information and communication sector. So I think these are the opportunity for investment in Thailand that I hope that investor will see the future of the investment in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Kupisit, for your presentation, especially the outlook for the future and the opportunities out there, which certainly looks very encouraging despite all the challenges faced. We now have around 20 minutes left for questions and answers. As I noted earlier, you can use the chat function to send your questions in to the host. We already have received some questions and many questions that we have focused on the timeline going forward. Given the progress already made in containing the pandemic, the question is, what is the timeline the timeline for Thailand to open up the country further, especially for short-term travelers and tourists. I was wondering whether either panelists can share their thoughts on the future timeline.
Hi, this is Dr. Thanarak. May I start first, and then probably Dr. Pis can give some comments. Actually, we did planning. We did the plan for reopen the countries for quite some times. At the times, probably we are thinking about in the next few months, October or November, so we may start bringing in the short-term travelers to coming into the countries. But one thing I would like to also mention is that we are now open for the businessmen to come into the countries. Although the only problem was that the flight that come into the Thailand may be still very limited. But we are working on reopen the country furthermore. So in conclusion, at the moment, anybody can request for coming into Thailand. There may be some rules that we will impose. For example, some certain quarantine periods that they have to go through. But we are considering reopen more, and probably those models will be able to apply in October or probably November.
As a follow-up question to that, perhaps there has been some discussion about possible travel bubbles. Are there any plans for Thailand to discuss the formation of travel bubbles with any particular country, and what would likely be the procedure?
The answer is probably the same. We are considering several countries that did not can. We start from low risk and then moving on to the higher risk countries. So at the moment, we are considering several provinces in China and some other countries that doesn't have any cases for quite some time. The cutoff number of days without COVID has been considered, and we would like to make it not too long so that we can include more countries or more cities, more provinces than we originally thought. But currently, we are looking at that. I just have the meeting last Tuesdays on this issue, and I would like to inform that the outlook for incoming travelers are getting better every day.
Thank you. A question for Dr. Pisit is, which sectors have fared the best amidst the pandemic, and which sectors have been hit the hardest?
In terms of the economic sector, I would have to say that Thailand has always been fortunate that we have the agricultural sector to handle the situation at the time of the crisis. So I think when we look at in terms of the economic number, the agricultural sector in Thailand has been supporting the economy at the time of the COVID-19. In terms of the economic impact that we see, of course, COVID-19 affected the most in terms of the tourism-related sector, which we classify into the service sector. So the tourism-related sector has been the most affected. So in terms of the economic number, we see that the hotel and restaurant sector has been the most affected, and also the transportation sector that has been affected. But having said that, I think if we see the gradual recovery in terms of the domestic tourism from the third quarter onward for the second half of the year, we can expect the service sector to recover for Thailand. So basically, we can see that the service sector has been the most affected. Industrial sector also affected because of the global supply chain disruption from the COVID-19. But so we see that the strong contraction in the automotive sector in Thailand, which is a big manufacturing sector in Thailand, on also the electrical appliance and computer sector. But the latest number that we monitor in terms of the manufacturing sector, we see the improving sign. The latest number that we see in July, we can see the improving sign, both from the manufacturing sector in the auto industry, in the electrical industry, but also the from the spending in terms of the vehicle sales that we see the improving sign. But the overall manufacturing sector, we see some bright spot in some manufacturing sector. For example, the food processing sector, the rubber glove sector. So there are some sector within the industry sector that has been doing quite well during the time of the COVID-19 situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question to Dr. Thanarat is we understand that Thailand has a program to try to develop a vaccine. What is the progress made on this vaccine, and when can we expect it to be able to be made available?
There are three groups of vaccine experimenting groups in Thailand. The best one that we did was they already finished the experiment in animals models. They are trying to move those vaccine development and testing into the human or clinical trials. We may be able to start our clinical trial in human early next year. And the researchers has the plan to expedite the experiment, but with all of the safety standard requiring by the US FDA. So we are looking forward to those clinical trial in human. But since Thailand haven't have any cases for quite some time, the human trial of Thai vaccine will be very likely to be done in other countries that has more cases.
We got a follow-up question on the issue of vaccines. Is Thailand taking part in any international endeavors to develop a vaccine, for example, under the WHO? And another question is whether the Thai government has been in contact with any pharmaceutical companies to ensure access to their vaccines once it becomes available.
Yes, we work closely with WHO and also work with some private companies. I can mention one is the AstraZeneca and Oxford groups. We start talking with them to probably bring in their technologies if their trials is a successful one. We ask their permission to have the vaccine manufacturers in Thailand, and those initiation and those discussion has been moving forward, and hopefully we can reach agreements.
Another question on vaccines, which seems to be very much on people's minds, is what is Thailand doing to prepare for shipment of vaccines, I guess, once it becomes available?
I believe it is for the vaccine that is testing in Thailand, right? We have vaccine company within the countries. So if our vaccines successful vaccine. We plan to manufacture the vaccine in Thailand, and those companies has already get setting up and planning for the vaccine manufacturing in the future if the vaccine testing or vaccine experiment is successful one.
Thank you. We have a question here for Kun Pisit is what is the government doing to help workers in the informal economy, which is estimated to be quite sizable in Thailand?
I think since COVID-19, we have given the cash handout during the month of April, May, and June, 5,000 baht per month. We give to the informal worker 15.3 million person, and we also support the farmers household, 10 million farmers household. So in total, about 25 million that in the informal sector that has already been supported by the government policy. Looking forward, I think the government are focused now on the SME support and the business operator to support them during the continuation of the COVID-19 impact on the economy, the global economy, and also in Thailand. So I think now the employment, maintaining the employment will be the key policy focus for the in terms of the economic policy going forward. So I think in the coming days we will see that the government may come out with the package to support to encourage, to give incentive for the company to maintain the employment for the employment in the future. Thank you.
Also for Dr. Pisit, you already alluded to part of this in your answer just a moment ago, but there was a question whether any more economic aid and relief packages will be announced. Will Thailand enact additional measures to support sectors that have been particularly hit hard by COVID-19, for example, the hospitality sector or other industries?
Yes, Ambassador. I think in the policy support to the tourism sector, the government plan to expand the tourism incentive that we have already initiated under the Rao Pai Tia Doi Kan program that will try to expand the incentive to the tourism sector to encourage domestic tourism at the time of the foreign tourism not in place at the moment. So the domestic tourism will be the key support for the economy in the second half of the year. And also the government will try to support the domestic spending through the consumer spending. So I think in the coming days, I think you will see the additional economic packages that coming out for Thailand. But the key important thing is that in terms of the fiscal planning, as I mentioned, the 1 trillion baht program, so far we have already disbursed about 380 billion baht out of the 1 trillion baht program that I highlighted earlier. So we can see that the government for this year and next year, we have the additional amount to inject into the economy over 600 billion baht to continue to support the economy and also to implement the new policy if needed in the future. So I think the government have enough fiscal resources to conduct the policy in the future.
Thank you. We also have another question on the economic front has Thailand seen supply chains shifting to Thailand during the pandemic and also against the backdrop of the increasing trade tensions between the United States and China?
Yes, I think when we look at last year before the COVID pandemic, there was a trade war between the major countries. So I think we are starting to see the more investment coming from the major country, from Europe, from US, and from China. So when we look at in terms of the BOI investment figure, we can see that investment coming from different countries. I think there are many studies that mention Vietnam and Thailand are the two major beneficiaries from the ongoing trade conflict among the major economies. So I think Thailand, as we prepare our Eastern Economic Corridor, and we are investing heavily in our infrastructure, I think this will help to prepare the country for the incoming investment into the country.
Thank you. We have a question for Dr. Thanarak is if restrictions were further lifted in order to mitigate the economic impacts, how ready would be the healthcare sector if there were to be a second surge?
Okay, this is very important question. This is a great question. Our goals is to control the outbreak or to control the spread of the disease good enough so that the economics and people can go on with their life. Our goals was not to limit the number of cases to zeros as we are having today. We are trying our best to control the spread of the disease. So if we have the new case detected in the countries, we are not going to be very surprised. What we are trying to do is trying to limit the spreading of the disease and not make it affected other people's life. As you can see that in our first lockdown, it was just a soft lockdown. Most of the industry, most of the business can still go on and maintain their business activities. There was some sectors that has been limited and has been affected, as Khun Pisit has already been mentioned. So far as we have improved our capacity further, we plan to increase the numbers of our communicable disease control unit from about 1,000 teams to more than 3,000 teams. We are increasing our laboratory capacities. We are now having almost laboratories in every provinces, and we hope to have the laboratories for COVID-19 in every provinces very soon, by probably the first quarter of the next fiscal years. Our number of beds for COVID-19 patients has also been increased. We have worked with the hotel. In the past, when you compare the situation with other countries, Thailand admitted every single COVID-19 patients, unlike other countries that admitted only more severe cases of COVID-19. But in Thailand, asymptomatic cases, very mild cases, and every single cases we admit to the hospital. And when the signs and symptoms improved, we move them to what we call hospital. That is the hospital in the hotel, so that we can isolate the patients a little bit longer to limit the spread of the disease. So for the public health sectors, although we are at the times of having no cases, it doesn't mean that we are not doing anything. So we are still keep improving our capacity so that we can handle the situation even better if we have to face the second phase of pandemics.
Thank you very much, and that is comforting to know. We received not so much a question, but a comment, which says the government's travel subsidy scheme is very much appreciated, but excludes Bangkok businesses to benefit as residents can only use the scheme outside their home province. It would be recommended to remove such restrictions. Also, as domestic tourism is insufficient to support the industry, a continuation of social security support for temporarily suspended workers could help support business and employment. So those are more comments. Does anyone wish to comment on that?
I think in terms of the policy objective, we are trying to encourage people to travel to different provinces. So that is why when the government, when the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Tourism formulate the policy, we try to, if we look at the Chim Chop Chai policy late last year, we also encourage people to go to different provinces and to spend the money. And I think also it has the second dimension in terms of the helping the businesses in the provincial level, in the provincial area to be supported by the policy. Thank you.
A question on the digital economy. It has become apparent not only in Thailand but around the world that given with the travel restrictions, the importance of the digital economy and the virtual world has become increasingly important. Will there be any specific measures to promote the digital economy in Thailand?
In terms of the digital economy, is one of the targeted industry in Thailand. So I would urge investor to look into the investment incentive given through the BOI that will give additional incentive for the businesses in the digital industry. In terms of the Ministry of Finance, we support the financial technology. So we encourage businesses to upgrade their investment in the digital technology through tax incentive. So for example, in my presentation, the companies can deduct up to 2.5 times in terms of their investment in the new digital related technology.
I think we have time for one last question. And I think it's a question very much on many people's minds, is when do you foresee the current 14-day quarantine requirement to be lifted for travelers entering the country?
That will be a very challenging question, but I would say that it's really depending on the situations and comparing the situation or the risk of Thailand having the diseases when compared to other countries. When we start to see that the risk of spreading of the diseases in the countries is similar to the other countries or to the countries that we lift the quarantine, then probably at that time we may lift the quarantine for certain countries. As for example, when we consider the travel bubbles, so we consider ourselves as a very low risk country. So if there is countries with a very low risk profile, then probably we can allow the traveler from those countries to come into Thailand with a very limited number of days of quarantine. But if there is travelers from the very high risk areas coming into Thailand, Thailand still having a very low risk, then probably we still have to quarantine the travelers. Then next step will be we may think about lifting the quarantines when we start to see that we can build the immunities for our population. That is when probably vaccine available, or when we are very confident that we have the treatment, the effective treatment for COVID-19 within the countries. At the moment, we are trying to look at our treatment guideline. Our treatment guideline is not the same as treatment guideline in the US or in Europe. We are using the medicines from China and from Japan, that is favipiravir or the trade of Arvigan. And although we know that these medicines have very limited randomized control trial in human for the COVID-19, but our observational data that the team analyzed following the treatment of more than 700 patients is very, it's looked very good. And we also plan to do the randomized control trial of this treatment in human. And we are planning to move or to treat the patient earlier because we see that if we start the antiviral treatment early to treat the patients within 4 days of developing symptoms, the outcome is very, very good. So if those conditions are met, I believe that we may be able to lift the quarantine, the 14 days quarantine in those situations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid this is all the time we have left for today's session, which I'm sure all of you will agree with me has been very informative and useful as we continue to work together to promote Thai-US relations. Before we close, I would like to once again thank all of you for participating in today's inaugural session. I also wish to once again extend a special thanks to Vice Minister Wichawat, Ambassador de Sombri, Dr. Thanarat, and Dr. Pisit for taking the time to join us and share their views on what's happening in Thailand today. Looking ahead, we hope to organize a second one at the end of next month, where we will be inviting the Eastern Economic Corridor Office and the Thailand Board of Investment to provide you with an update on the latest progress made and the investment opportunities available in the kingdom. Thank you, and until next time, goodbye. สวัสดีครับ